Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Liminars League podcast. Again, I'm Hal Greenblatt, your host. Producing the show as always is Austin Needs. As we continue our journey learning about athletes in transition, we welcome today Coach Pete Paciorek. Coach Pete is the founder and CEO of Character Loves Company and the author of Character Loves Company, Defining the Teachable Moments in Sport. He's also a professor here at University of Florida. He's a former athletic director as well as a former head coach at IMG Academy, and he's currently a high school coach for baseball. Coach Pete grew up in California where he came from a super athletic family. He was drafted by the San Diego Padres and spent a number of years in the organization. Coach P ultimately turned to coaching and teaching, focusing on the value of character literacy in sport. With that, I want to welcome Coach Pete, and I appreciate you joining us today. So let's get into it. How are you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing awesome, Hal. Thanks so much to you and Austin for having me on this podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're super excited to hear your story because it delves into multiple transitions of leaving sport and then getting back into sport, and just a lot of things that these collegiate athletes who are transitioning out are really going to take and use. So to get started, tell us a little about growing up and getting involved with youth sport.
So I was involved in sport from probably 3 years old. My dad played in the major leagues. He comes from a family, all 5 of his brothers played Major League Baseball. And so just being around high-level sports is something I grew up in major league clubhouses. When my uncle played for the Mets, he played for the Braves, he played for the Dodgers, played for a bunch of teams. And so I just grew up with athletics in my family, but it was never just about winning. It was always about the character part, the character component. And so I kind of always knew that once my baseball career, my athletic career was over, that I'd probably get into coaching in some capacity.
So I was doing a little research. So you were drafted by the Padres, and I think it was the 16th round, right?
16th round, yes, out of high school.
Was this straight out of high school?
It was out of high school, and that was back when they had what they used to call the draft and follow. So they drafted me, and then they had up until a week or so prior to the next year's draft to still sign those individuals. They don't do that anymore, but it gave me an opportunity to go to a community college where I could get more physical and just mentally better prepared for the rigors of professional athletics.
So tell us a little bit about your journey preparing for that baseball career with that little stay in college.
So, I was drafted by the Padres. I was told I was going to be drafted in the top 5 rounds. Very disappointed when I got the first call from, I think it was the Indians in the 9th round, and they said kind of what the offer was going to be, and it didn't seem right. And so we declined it, and then we didn't get another call until the 16th round from the Padres. And it just didn't seem right to sign at that time based on the signing bonus and all that stuff and giving away my college eligibility. So I had offers to go to Cal State Fullerton, Pepperdine, USC, Florida State, some different schools, pretty good scholarship packages. But my dad was so used to growing up with his brothers that they were all used to getting full rides and full scholarships. And, so these were 2/3 scholarship and pay a little bit in loans and things like that. And so we declined it. I went to a junior college. It was a good experience. I still have a lot of my closest friends were on that team, but the coaching wasn't great. The facilities weren't great. And so it was kind of a struggle of a year. And I was just really excited at the end of the year to sign that contract with the Padres and get into professional baseball and just kind of start my career.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how exciting it must be to really get down and be like, this is my job, this is my career, I'm looking forward to it. You mentioned that your whole family, played baseball, super athletic, very successful, and you started playing baseball at age 3. So I'm going to jump back real quick. Did you specialize, or did you sample different sports, or was it baseball all the way based on what your family did?
I love that question, Hal. That's an awesome question. And I know in the class that I teach here at University of Florida, the grad level class that you're actually in, we talk a lot about early sampling versus early specialization. And for my family, my dad was a coach for 50 years after his career got cut short. And he was all about every sport. But I did everything growing up. I mean, every sport you could think of aside from rugby. So I was actually, my favorite sport growing up was basketball. I had a dream of playing in the NBA. The Lakers, I grew up in Los Angeles. The Lakers were my team with Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Michael Cooper, that whole team, Byron Scott, Kurt Rambis, I can name them all. And that was my squad. And I wanted to play for the Lakers. And I realized when I got into high school, I was still pretty equal talent-wise between the two sports, but I figured I had a better chance to pursue baseball, especially after having a pretty good senior year where I started to get some attention from scouts and colleges.
So what kind of pressure was placed on you being that your family was so successful in baseball?
You know how that's a that's a really good question. And the pressures weren't so much, they were more internalized. There were
Mhm.
pressures and thinking, oh, I have to play in the major leagues. That's my career path to be successful. I was never a great student only because I didn't apply myself. I applied myself to sports because I thought that was my route to be successful. And since then, I now have 2 master's degrees, and I'm working on a PhD in character education and citizenship here at University of St. Louis, Missouri. And I've found since that time that I can do just as much academically as I could athletically. I was just kind of holding myself back by those limitations. But the pressures weren't necessarily from my family. It was more my own internalized, like, oh, this is the path I have to go. So it kind of limited me as far as branching out and building strong pillars in my life at that time.
So those pressures that you placed on yourself, did that carry with you throughout your baseball career, or did you finally learn to, just be in the moment?
I early on it did. It was all my eggs were in that basket of, if I'm not going to be a professional baseball player, I don't know what else I can be.
Mhm.
It was that mindset that it was kind of make it to the major leagues or bust type of attitude. And I think a lot of our approach, and I think a lot of minor league players have that because they've been so successful athletically. I learned since that time, the tail end of my career, probably the last 3 years playing professionally, that I kind of took some of that pressure off and really got back to just enjoying that game, that childhood love for playing baseball, being there for my teammates. I became a much better teammate when I got traded over. Not that I was a bad teammate, but a better leader, I guess I should say, when I got traded over to the Dodgers, and we won 2 league championships. I have 2 rings in the minor leagues from the Dodgers, and I feel like I became a much better leader. I played with guys like David Ross, who's now the skipper for the Chicago Cubs, and I learned a lot from him, and hopefully he took a little bit from me as well. But just that's where I really became a better leader, when I started to take that pressure off myself and just enjoy playing sport again.
It's interesting. We had a guest on previously who talked about having to take that step back to be a better teammate, to be a better leader, and really be in the moment to enjoy where you are. And that's when you start to achieve more. So with that, tell us a little about your baseball journey. We know that, you had the pressure at the very beginning, and then once you became the leader, more success came. So take us through your journey of baseball, professional baseball.
Growing up, in high school, my freshman year, I played freshman baseball. So a lot of people think, oh my gosh, if I'm not playing varsity as a freshman, I'm not going to be any good. So I was middle of the pack. I was probably the 5th or 6th top player on our freshman team. It was a good program. My sophomore year, I made the varsity. I batted 9th. I was a 9th. I played first base and batted 9th. How many first basemen bat 9th? And then my junior year, I was more of a key player. And my senior year, I was a state player of the year. That's when I really started to get, in the state of California, started to get some recognition. And then I went to junior college, struggled a little bit, but that struggle was good because it prepared me for the minor leagues. And then I was a prospect for the Padres all the way up through. And then in 1999, I was playing in Mobile, Alabama. I was the youngest position player on the team. We had some younger pitchers, but I got hit in the face. I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, took a 95-mile-an-hour fastball off my jaw, broke my jaw in 2 places, and I was wired shut the rest of the season. I was bitter. When I came back, I couldn't play for 8 weeks. When I came back, they brought a guy down from AAA who was just absolutely mashing the baseball, but he was an older guy. I was 21, 22. He was 30, close to 30. And, I had more physical skills and things like that, but he played because he was hitting like 380. And so I sat the bench, and I was really bitter, and which isn't like me. And so that taught me a good lesson. And I get to play here and there. I get to pinch hit here and there in the 9th inning against the closer. And I'd go up there and just wail and try to hit home runs. And my batting average suffered. And then I ended up asking for my release and got picked up by the Dodgers. And it was kind of a renewed sense for me. And I just, at that point, I said, you know what, I'm going to be, the Dodgers actually sent me back down to A-ball, where I'd already been an all-star and all that. And so I realized, this is an opportunity for me to prepare for my coaching career for the next steps and really step up and be a leader in the locker room and try to start uplifting. That's kind of where the character component of what I do now, building character through sport with my youth programs and with my teams that I coach now.
So you left the Padres organization and went to the Dodgers. Can you tell, because as we mentioned, this is about transition. So that's a huge transition, switching organizations. And as you mentioned, going from AAA back down to single A. Can you tell us a little about that transition and the effect that it had on you?
It was tough at first, just because when I got drafted by the Padres, I was 18 years old, so I was still a baby, and I was their guy. I mean, they gave me a nice signing bonus. They took care of my college education, and I was one of their guys, and I was a prospect. And then when I went to the Dodgers, it was kind of a rude awakening because they didn't draft me. They hadn't really invested much in me, if anything. And so they were just they had their guys that were coming up through the system that they were building, young guys, young kids who were growing, and so they were going to get the promotions to the next level. So they sent me down a couple levels, and so it was kind of a grind, meeting new people. I was comfortable with the Padres. I understood the system. The Dodgers were very tight with their rules and regulations, and your haircuts, and you couldn't have a goatee and things like that. So it was just a different culture, and I wasn't one of their guys. I think gradually over time, I became a little bit more of one of their guys because they saw the type of player I was and the type of leader I was. But that was definitely a tough transition.
So you won your championships with the Dodgers, right?
Yes, two minor league championships in A-ball and AA with the Dodgers.
And after that, that's when you started to understand the idea of getting into coaching and starting to transition out of sport. Was there anything that was, easy to help navigate you with that transition?
So I love that question. I think it's so vital for all athletes, high-level athletes, whether it's high school, college, professional, to answer this question themselves. And really, one of the pivotal moments, turning points for me was in 2000 when I got picked up by the Dodgers. They had a sports psychologist come, and this was before sports psychology was big at all. I didn't know anything about it. And actually, there was kind of a negative connotation towards sports psychologists. So some people were like, okay, what's this all about? And so the gentleman's name was Ken Ravizza, who just actually passed away. And he was one of the legends and the pioneers of sports psychology. He did a lot of work with Evan Longoria. I know a lot of major leaguers, Dodgers, Padres. And so we had just one day with him, probably an hour session with him. And he talked about having pillars in your life, and not just putting all your eggs in the basket of, I want to be a major league player, and if I don't get there, my life is over, and what else can I do? He talked about building your foundation, building your house from the ground up, and you have to have multiple pillars. If you have one, you're in trouble. If you have two, at least you have a second one, like your faith or your family. But if you start to build, you have 3, 4, 5, 6 pillars in your life, that's when you're standing on, and you're on a strong foundation. So if baseball doesn't happen, you get injured, you just don't make it. It's tough. It really is a tough road to get to the major leagues, unless you're a guy who's a first rounder throwing 98 miles an hour. But even that's hard because you got to stay healthy. And so I really took that to heart, and that stuck with me today, is building pillars in my life. And so for me, I think compared to some of my friends who maybe were even more talented than me, and maybe even made it to the major leagues for a little bit, got a cup of coffee, and I didn't quite get there. But I had these pillars established with my family, with my relationships. I had my wife, we dated since high school, all through my professional career. So we had a really strong relationship, and our faith to each other was so strong. And my faith, my religious faith, my friends, school, that was another big thing. So the Padres paid for my school. So I played in the minor leagues for 9 years, which is a long time, but every off season, except for one, when I played winter ball in Panama, I went back to school. So there was a school, Cal State LA, that was on the quarter system. The semester system wouldn't work because our season would end too late, but the quarter system worked. So I would do one quarter and just grind away one quarter at a time. By the time I finished my career, I had one term left. I graduated my undergrad, and then I went right in, got my master's degree while I was coaching at Cal State LA, got some coaching experience at Whittier College, a small Division III, as well as I was working on my first master's degree. But most young people who, when they sign with major league organizations, I don't know if they still do this, but they give a package for college as well. So they give you a signing bonus, and then they give you the school package, but you have to use it within a certain amount of time. And a lot of people, that just goes to the wayside. They don't take advantage. And so many of my friends never went back to college. And then when they get out, they don't have an education. So they don't know what else to do, because all they've done in their life is play baseball and get paid to do it. So that's a really challenging transition.
So obviously you were fortunate enough to kind of start building your life plan while you were playing. For others, do you think that's the biggest challenge, not looking towards the future and identifying what the next step may be?
I absolutely, Hal. That's absolutely it. And I believe in living in the moment. I think it's important. I think I even have that right up here, live in the moment. But so that's important. But at the same time, you also have to think future. And a lot of my teammates, a lot of good friends, and I'll tell you a quick story. I'm not going to say his name, but one of my good friends with the Padres, who we played 2 or 3 years, maybe even 4 years together in the minor leagues, terrific player, had talent. He got released. He got bounced around in the minor leagues, and his career ended. And he got such into this habit of and a lot of pro ball players do this. They get into going out and partying every night and drinking. And so that was a habit that he had established. I'm all about teaching the young people I work with. You're establishing habits for life right now. That's where these character values through my book and through my nonprofit are so important. Well, this individual, a few years after his career ended, he was married, had kids, and he ended up out drinking, and he drove home and he ran somebody over, and it was vehicular manslaughter. He fled the scene not knowing, and this is a good part, he just didn't even know, and he got pulled over down the road, and he's still locked up in the state penitentiary. And this is not a person who you would think would be locked up in state penitentiary, but it was habits that he had established in professional baseball and his way of dealing with maybe the failures of not making it, or what he foresaw as the failures of not making it was to go and drink. And it's a sad story, and it happens quite a bit. And that's where I think if we can teach young people that through the vehicle of sport, it's not just do you make it to the major leagues, do you get that Division I scholarship? It's about life skills. I encourage all of our players. When I was at IMG, all these guys, they invest so much into it, and their parents invest so much into it. If you go to a Division III school and you can play sports, the sport that you love, baseball, let's say, for 4 more years at whatever level, Division I, II, or III, scholarship or no scholarship, you're learning so many life skills that are going to help you as you transition out. But the focus is so much on just winning at all costs and getting that scholarship or making it to the major leagues, instead of how am I growing as a teammate? How am I growing as a person? And sport is a great vehicle to help teach that. But that shift in mindset has to be established at a younger age.
Absolutely. I think we need to focus more with the youth on teaching character values, life skills, financial literacy, because there's so many athletes who end up broke, not just via money, but in life in general when they're leaving sport, because that transition is tough for them. In one word, how would you describe your experience to transition to life after sport?
Balance.
Balance.
I would say balance is probably the most important. If all those eggs are going into just your sport career and you're not developing relationships, I can't tell you how important relationships are. I think the reason why David Ross is the manager for the Cubs, I mean, he's a smart guy, he's a catcher for 15 years in the major leagues. He was never the most talented guy on any team he's ever been on, probably. But he knew how to build relationships with people. And, and I think if you have a balanced life and it's not just about you, it's about uplifting others, you're going to connect better with others. So I think balance is so important. And I'm trying to maintain that balance now as somebody who's got a full-time job and doing this and getting a PhD. And so finding time to balance family and the things that are important to you, and really staying focused on all of those pillars, not just building one pillar.
So we're now in the separation stage where you've decided that coaching and teaching is going to be the next step. So in the months following your transition out of professional baseball, what was your life like?
The months after, it really wasn't all that tough for me. I played as hard as I could. I could look in the mirror. Coaches always tell you, play as hard as you can, so when it's all done, you can look in the mirror and say you gave it your all. I really felt like I did. I felt like I was a good teammate. I felt like I played hard. I played through injuries. I worked hard in the off season. It just wasn't in the cards. And I was okay with that. At the end of the day, I still remember my last at bat. No major league organization wanted me anymore. And so I played independent league, and I was actually, a buddy of mine was a manager, and I was ready to go back, get into coaching and get my master's, finish my degree. And he convinced me to come back one more year and be a player coach. I was a hitting coach and played first base. And I actually was still hesitant. He's like, well, you have a brother, right? And my brother plays short. He's like, we're looking for a shortstop. My brother had been bouncing around in the minor leagues, Mac. And so he said, how about Mac plays short? You play first. You're the hitting coach. You get some coaching in your resume. I said, okay, you got me. And so I played one more year. And that was a year that I really enjoyed it. And I just, and it was my start to coaching and just seeing that this is something I want to do for a career.
I can't even imagine how exciting it must have been to be able to play with your brother in a professional league. That just, to me, I mean, I have a brother who's not athletic at all. That just would have been the highlight of my life. So I can imagine how exciting that was for you, especially to start your coaching career.
It was a lot of fun, and Mac and I played together in high school. We lost the state title. He played short, I played first. And we lost the state title by a run, 3-2.
Oof.
I played at Cal State Fullerton. And so, but my buddies from high school, it's so, the teammates, the relationships you build through sport, whether it's high school, college, pro, those are relationships that are so strong today. But it was so much fun, as you said, Hal, to play with my brother. And that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest surprise was to you when you transitioned to life after sports?
Just that finding ways to compete, I guess, for me is, and I still look for those ways. That's why I got this little boo-boo on my chin from, we started baseball practice with a high school team that I'm coaching up here in St. Louis, and it's cold, so we're indoors. And so I was getting them fired up the first day of practice and trying to make a point. I can't remember what the point was about, but it doesn't really make sense. But I went and, I was talking about going hard from home to first, always running hard. And so I had my assistant coach getting me on the stopwatch, and last second decision, which wasn't a great decision, was I'm going to go head first slide here. And I ended up cutting up my hand, and I ended up bonking my chin a little bit, but we were wearing masks, so the guys didn't really notice. And my mask off after practice had a little bit of blood in there. My wife wasn't very happy with me, but that opportunity to still compete and still kind of show yourself that you still got it. And so you find ways to do that. I definitely don't want to live vicariously through my kids, which a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. Is I want my kids, if they want to play sports, that's on them to play it. I'm going to be the person who's letting the coach do the coaching. And if I want to coach them, then I better put a whistle on and get out there. I'm not going to be coaching from the sideline and all that. Neither is my wife. So the transition wasn't that difficult for me, as I said, because I put my heart and soul into it. And because I had different pillars in my life, and I had that education to fall back on. And I knew that I had something bigger potentially than sport, than playing professional sport, where I could make a great impact still.
So you were fortunate to go from playing into coaching to various degrees. Did you notice any changes in your personal relationships with family, with friends, with coaches, with former teammates that were impacted by your decision to ultimately retire and get into coaching?
I feel like I had more time. I had more time for other people. Mm-hmm. Because as a professional athlete, you're so focused on yourself. And I don't think I was ever an egomaniac or anything like that, but you're so focused on getting your work in. You get up early in the morning, and professional athletes, collegiate athletes, high school, their routine is crazy. So, you get up at 5 in the morning to get your workout, and then you go and you do your weight room workout, then you do your sprints, and then you do your batting practice. And it was literally the whole day was just around preparing in the off season, or during the season, especially for the game or for the season. And so once I was able to hang them up, I missed it. And people would say, "Hey, you want to come play on my softball league?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm okay. I don't need to do that. But maybe in the future I will." But it was one of those things where the transition felt a little easier for me maybe than it was for other people, because of the foundation that I had established in my life.
Was there anybody who you can point out that really helped you with that transition?
Definitely my wife, who was with me the whole time. When I broke my jaw, she was there. She was getting her degree, and she has a master's, and she's a teacher now. And so it's great that our lives were able to, she's, as a teacher, you can really go anywhere. So we've traveled different places. We moved from California to Florida for coaching. We moved up to St. Louis and back, so there's always a need for great teachers like her. And so she's been there all along. My family's been great. My mom passed away when I was younger, when I was 12. And I say this all the time. I share it with my team because I want them to know that, be a little bit vulnerable and show some vulnerability, and that nobody's life is perfect. And we all have things that we've struggled through. And my mom passed away, when I was 12 years old. And still to this day, 32, I'm 44, 45 now, 32 years later, she's still one of the most impactful people in my life. The foundation that she established, the love, the care. So I keep her with me every day, and want to make her proud. And so that's kind of what part of my why is. I want to make my mom proud. I want to help kids. I want to make an impact in people's lives.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with the teaching aspect as well. As a former teacher, we want to raise the people up and make them better than we are. So I agree with you there. Now, with your transition out, did you feel that you lacked any skills, or were you pretty good with coping with your transition? Because you seem like you had a pretty good regimented schedule with, school in the off season, then going to spring training and playing, and then just repeating that over again.
Yeah. So in order to fill that void I like to keep myself busy. I have, sometimes have more jobs than I probably should. But I love staying busy and feeling like I'm making a difference, making an impact, progress. I took a strengths test, and my number one strength is a love of learning. I truly love to learn. So I like to keep myself busy. So filling that void. And actually, you know what? In the minor leagues, Hal, that's a great question. I thinking back on that, I wish in my 9 years, I wish I would have made more use of the bus time. We're traveling in the Southern League. You're traveling every road trip is from Mobile, Alabama to Jacksonville to where you're traveling at least 13 hours. I mean, it would seem like every road trip was 13 hours. And yeah, there's a lot of sleeping time. You're sleeping on the bus. You're watching, how many times can you watch Caddyshack? There's only so many times you can watch certain movies, Love of the Game and all that. I wish I would have taken up Rosetta Stone. I don't know if they had it back then, but there's probably something. I wish I would have learned a language. My wife is a language teacher. I wish we didn't even have cell phones back then, but I wish I would have made more use of technology, read more books on the buses. I feel like that was kind of a waste of time that I could have made more use of. And even when you're on the road, you're in the hotel and you're on the road for a 4-day or 8-day road trip and just doing something more productive than sitting around watching TV and trying to, get through the day and up until game time. Everything was geared around game time or getting to the ballpark. And so it goes back to the idea of building pillars. Pro athletes nowadays, when they're on the bus or they're flying, now you have Rosetta Stone, you have podcasts, you have all kinds of things that you can, like your podcast here, there's all kinds of ththings you could be continuing to learn from. And so if I can go back and do it again, that's what I wish. There was just so much downtime. I don't have that downtime now. I love reading, and I have to find time to read late at night or early in the morning when my kids are sleeping. But so it's almost the reverse. I feel like there was more time when I was a professional athlete that I just kind of sat around and wasted, versus now there isn't as much wasted time because I'm more productive.
Right. So we're now in the reincorporation phase. So you're out of professional baseball. You've transitioned out of competitive baseball. You're moving into your new life. So there's 3 eras. There's a separation phase when you're saying goodbye and you're moving on. There's a liminal where you're in between the old athlete and the new you, and then the reincorporation phase, which is you're adapting to your new life and your new identity. Of those 3, which do you think you had the hardest time, the hardest difficulty managing? Separation, liminal, or the reincorporation?
I think right now I'm still in that reincorporation stage. I am so excited, Hal, about character in sport. And it's always been a part, but this is my passion now. And like I said, I'm going back and getting my PhD, and it's hard. The lead instructor, the lead professor, Dr. Marvin Berkowitz, is one of the key gurus in the space of character education and citizenship. And he challenges me every day with how I do things with my coaching, and it's helping me become a better coach. And so I truly want to be an expert in this field of character education specific to sport. And I really want to travel around the country and around the world. And I want to help coaches, young coaches at local recreation centers that have no background or not a whole lot of background in coaching. And so often volunteer coaches or even paid coaches, their focus is only on winning. And if we can shift that to focusing on impacting the lives of people and the character of individuals, you're going to actually win more, because they're going to be more connected to their teammates. They're going to care about each other more. They're going to put their priorities in the right place, and they're going to do the right things. So you're not going to have off-field challenges like we see so often with athletics, high-level athletics right now. So I think that third stage is the stage that I'm in right now. It's definitely a challenge, kind of reinventing yourself. And I've always been thought of, people have always seen me as there's the sport guy. I'm the sport guy. And that's okay. That's fine. I really love the title of being a coach, but I want to be known as the character guy, the guy who's teaching character and helping coaches across the country, across the world, figure out how they can help our next generation of youth really make the best decisions, learn how to be true leaders through sports. So that way, when they get into business, when they get into relationships, when they become dads or moms or business owners, they're doing that with the highest level of integrity.
And what a perfect segue to our final part, which is paying it forward. And obviously you do a lot of this now with the coaching in the class. But say you were giving an opportunity to meet with current college athletes. What's one vital piece of information as they're on their way out the door as seniors that you can mention about your transition that you experienced at the end of your sport career?
Hal, I love that. I love this question because it's allowed me to when you talk about paying it forward, it's allowing me to really think about what's something that I haven't mentioned yet, which is networking and finding mentors. I cannot emphasize this enough. I've had amazing, and I waited a little bit later. I waited until my 30s before I really started to build strong networks and build these relationships with mentors. I have some of the most amazing mentors. So with Character Loves Company, my nonprofit, Fred Clare, who was the former general manager for the Dodgers when they won their previous World Series back in 1988, he's the chairman of the board. He's amazing. Just such a, I mean, he's in his mid 80s now, and he's still going strong, and he's still impacting people. And then Bill Schumard with the Special Olympics Southern California, the work he's done. He was a two-time college athletic director at Cal State Fullerton, and then at his alma mater at Long Beach State, and he's on the board as well for Character Loves Company. Dr. Sagas has become a very strong mentor of mine, who's the chairman of the sport management program here at University of Florida. There's just, and I think the more we can emphasize to young collegiate athletes or high school athletes that start building that network, start reaching out to people that you want to emulate, that are in a career path that you want to potentially enter, and reach out to them. I've never had one person that I've reached out to for advice as a mentor say no, because that's what we love doing. We love paying it forward. We love giving it back to other people. So I always tell my students at University of Florida, I tell the students I coach, reach out to me. You're never going to bother me. People will say, oh, I don't want to bother you. No, it's not bothering me. It's actually something I really enjoy doing. And most people really enjoy paying it forward and giving it back. And so I'm continuously looking to build strong relationships and find those networks, build those networks, and find mentors that can help me navigate my career to be as effective as I can be.
And I got one final question for you. With regard to your transition to life after sport, if you could do it all over again, would you change anything?
Aside from making more use of my time when I was in professional baseball, I would not. People say, oh, 9 years in the minor leagues, was that a waste of time? I say, heck no, that wasn't a waste of time. I learned so much about life. It prepared me, and I faced some really tough challenges where I played during the steroid era. And if you look at me, you can tell I never did steroids. Pretty skinny. They always called me skinny. But and I had multiple people in different organizations say, hey, Pete, if you got on steroids, those balls that you're hitting to the warning track would be home runs. And my character, I'm not tooting my horn, but I always said, no way, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it on my own merit. I'm going to do it the right way. And so I think that, that's been something that I'm proud of. And I'm doing this character work that I'm doing with youth. Had I have cheated in the game or done something unethical, and like I said, I'm not perfect, nobody is, but I feel like doing things with high levels of integrity has led me to the successes that I'm having in life.
Awesome. Coach, I can't thank you enough for joining us. On behalf of Austin, I want to thank you all for listening. And remember, of course, progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So until next time, thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me on, guys.